In Jujutsu Kaisen, about 80% of a sorcerer's strength comes from his curse technique. This number could vary depending on the sorcerer and on the curse technique itself. But in the end, most of their strength comes from that technique, which is for example the reason why Yuji feels so underwhelming at the moment. All he has is his physical strength as well as regular curse energy. He doesn't even have crazy properties on his curse energy like Hakari or Kashimo, which is why it's very impressive to see somebody like Yuji holding his own in such an environment. But every curse technique works differently. Some curse technique will be extremely good because of their user. Some others will simply be good on anybody. In today's video, I'm going to be covering some of the best curse techniques in JJK. I will also let you know if the technique is good by itself or if it's because of the user. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Get this video to 200 likes if you're interested in my opinion about the weakest curse techniques in the series. But with all this out the way, let's get into it. Before we start, I just want to say that there are some techniques that I will not be mentioning. For example, Sukuna and Kashimo because we do not know how it is, or even the Angel and Takaba because their abilities are kind of weird to scale. And while the comedian seems like the best technique in the series, it would be too easy to just put it like that, therefore I would not include it. Yuta's technique will also not be included because we do not know everything about it. We don't even know how he acquires the techniques. But it is for sure a very good ability once you already have the other people's techniques. After this video, let me know in the comments if you think that I missed some technique and that I should have mentioned them. But now let's get into the main event. The first one we're going to be talking about is the most obvious one, the limitless. But this technique is not necessarily as strong as you think. On any random person, controlling space will be a good ability, but it doesn't make it the best ability in the verse. There's also the fact that without the 6 eyes, it is very complicated to manage this technique. But on a character like Gojo Satoru, having the 6 eyes and combining it with his creativity, this ability becomes the best in the verse in my opinion. Throughout the series, Gojo has shown how competent he was with the use of the limitless. After basically facing death against Toji, Gojo ascended and reached a whole new level of understanding when it comes to curse energy. With this, Gojo is not only able to keep his infinity up at all times without spending much energy, but also learning how to use red as well as learning the existence of hollow purple. The limitless has 3 phases: the neutral limitless, blue that is curse technique amplification, and red that is curse technique reversal. And by combining blue and purple, you can create an imaginary mass that destroys everything in his way. Very simple and broken ability as it is, but with Gojo Satoru it becomes even more broken, making it so broken that not even a character as strong and as smart as Sukuna was able to beat it. The second on the list is idol transfiguration from Mahito. If we were to give them both to the weakest sorcerer, I believe idol transfiguration would be better than the limitless, but it becomes even stronger with Mahito being its possessor. Mahito having one of the highest potentials in the series, and by that I mean above even Yuji and Megumi, it makes sense for him to get as good as he did with his ability. This technique allows you to have perfect control over your soul. As long as an attack doesn't affect the soul, it doesn't have any sort of effect on the user, which means that Mahito only has so many counters in the series. This ability to reshape your soul has a lot of utilities, being able to change shape whenever it's needed. For example, Mahito changing the shape of his feet so he can run faster to escape Mekamaru's blast, changing the shape of his hands into an object that can deal serious damage, like for example the blade that he used to cut Mekamaru's robot. But if being almost invincible was not enough, he also has the ability to one-shot anybody by simply touching them with his hands, unless the opponent's soul is way too strong. Only Yuji is able to do that because he has Sukuna inside him, but it's the only exception. There are plenty more utilities to this technique, but I don't think they need to be mentioned. I think everybody gets the point. And the domain expansion makes it even more broken than it already is. But this video is really about the curse technique themselves and not about the domain expansion. And before somebody tells me that the domain is part of it, I know, I just don't want to include it in this video. For the next ability, we have the 10 Shadows. The 10 Shadows is a pretty good ability by itself, but of course it has its limits. The first thing is that if the user is not as strong, the Shikigamis will also be pretty weak. The second one is that in general the user is not as strong in physical combat, meaning that if you're fast enough you can outplay the user and attack him directly. The third weakness, and I would say it's the most important one, is the 10th Shadow Mahoraga. Mahoraga being one of the strongest creatures in the series, no 10 Shadows user has ever been able to tame him, and anytime Mahoraga will be summoned, it will be to destroy the opponent as well as the summoner, meaning that Mahoraga is some sort of suicide bomb, but I wouldn't say that this makes it the best ability. That is unless you put it in the hands of Sukuna. Sukuna, who's unironically the best 10 Shadows user in history despite not being a Zenin. After taking Megumi's body, Sukuna took the 10 Shadows to a whole other level. not only being able to tame Mahoraga, but also making all the other Shikigamis way stronger, which we can also see in the size of the Shikigamis, with Megumi's Nue being around the same size as him or maybe twice as big, and Sukuna's Nue being the size of a building. Sukuna is also very smart when it comes to using a Shikigami at the right moment. On top of having the ability to combine more of them, use their abilities without summoning them, to switch place with Mahoraga in the shadows, or even putting the will on somebody else than Mahoraga himself, which of course allows him to keep Mahoraga hidden while he's still adapting to things, because he couldn't allow Mahoraga to be in Gojo's presence. So instead of taking the risk of losing Mahoraga, he simply kept him hidden while the adaptation was still being taken care of. Sukuna, with his insane amount of curse energy, his insane strength, and his insane intelligence, was able to make the 10 shadows one of the most broken techniques in the series. So strong that at some point, even Gojo Satoru thought he was going to lose. I would like to mention Akari's abilities, but unfortunately he is very dependent on his domain expansion, which I don't really want to mention in this video. But if I had to say something, I would say that he is one of the most broken ability for Hakari, but for any regular person, this ability would be terrible. Hakari's abilities being a literal representation of gambling, him knowing what he is doing, he will be fine. But the average gambler loses all of his money and turns to ruin, and this will translate perfectly into a regular person with Akari's abilities. The ability will simply be a problem for that person. Up next, we have an ability that doesn't really get mentioned a lot. It is Uro's Sky Manipulation. This ability allows the user to make the sky a tangible surface, allowing that person to distort space as he wishes. This is a pretty good ability in combat, but it is also useful in life in general. For example, Uro using it to levitate, or even using it instead of actually wearing clothes. While it is a very good ability for movement and for defense, it falls short when it comes to offensive capabilities, which is where a character like Uro comes in place. For example, coming up with Thin Icebreaker. By hitting the surface of the sky directly instead of the opponent, she can shatter it and deal crazy damage to the target. So she already makes her ability better. What if somebody that is even stronger and more creative was to get that ability? I don't really want to get into this because I don't have much ideas of what they could do with it, but this ability opens a lot of doors. And with the perfect user for that technique, it could be one of the best in the series. The next ability belongs to a character that I like a lot for no specific reason, but he is also one of the most hated characters in the series. It's Naoya Zenin and his Projection Sorcery. Projection Sorcery is one of the coolest and most unique abilities that I've seen in a minute. This technique allows the user to divide 1 second into 24 frames, and the frames are taken from the user's field of view. And from that point on, it can create a predetermined set of movement to follow during those 24 frames, 1 movement per frame. Put it in the simplest way possible, it could take 24 steps in 1 second, which is what makes him look so fast. But if the target does not respect the predetermined set of movement, they find themselves trapped into a frame for 1 second. And with how fast Naoya is, this is a very long time. But by being so fast, his opponent cannot react to anything he does. This way he can touch his opponent, but by touching the target, it forces him to not respect the predetermined set of movements, trapping his opponent into a frame for a full second. And after coming back as a vengeful spirit, his abilities were enhanced and he was able to move even faster than before, on top of being way stronger in general. The ability could be very broken on anybody that understands the ability. Of course, Naoya makes good use of it by already having decent speed, being a master of hand-to-hand, and being very smart. But what if a character that was even stronger or could get more creative had this ability? Like for example Gojo? Just like Uro's Sky Manipulation, this ability would also be one of the best in the series. Even though it kinda already is one of the best, there are more curse techniques that deserve to be mentioned, like for example Yuki's, Kenjaku's, or even Geto's curse techniques. But this will be the end of the video. Let me know in the comment what you think about this list. Let me know which curse technique you think is the best if they were given to the worst sorcerer. And let me know which one you think is the best if the best sorcerer was using them. I appreciate y'all for making it to this point. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. Let's get this video to 200 likes for me to talk about the worst curse techniques. And I'm trying to reach 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I'm counting on y'all for that. But only sub to my channel if you enjoyed the content that I put out. You can let me know in the comments if you have any sort of criticism or suggestions for future videos, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.